My name is Jordan Hale, and I'm about to tell you the story of how one family dinner changed my entire life. I'm 39 years old, and for 12 years I poured my soul into building something I thought would be mine someday. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday evening in Fort Worth, Texas, the kind of humid summer night where the air sticks to your skin and the cicadas won't shut up. My family had gathered at my parents' house for what I thought was a routine business discussion. Dad had been talking about retirement for months, and we all knew the conversation was coming. I sat at that familiar oak dining table, the same one where I'd done homework as a kid, where we'd celebrated birthdays and argued about everything from politics to football. The smell of my mom's pot roast filled the air, but my stomach was tight with anticipation. To continue listening to this beautiful and special story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Write your name and the city you're watching from, so I can include a special shout-out for you in an upcoming story. I had spent the last 12 years as the COO of Hale Logistics in everything but title. While Nathan worked in marketing and Dad handled the big picture, I was the one who automated our internal systems, negotiated supplier contracts, and personally brought in over $4 million in long-term clients. I didn't talk much in meetings, but when things broke, I fixed them. When clients had problems, they called me directly. That night, I expected a formal announcement, a strategic discussion about transition timelines, maybe even a conversation about my vision for the company's future. Instead, Dad stood up, raised his wine glass, and said words that would echo in my head for months. Let's all support Nathan as he steps into leadership. He has the presence our brand needs. Nathan, my younger brother, the one who'd been working in marketing for 3 years. Charismatic, yet, but completely clueless about operations. I blinked. I looked at my dad, then at Nathan, then back at my dad. No one looked back at me. They had already made the decision, and they had excluded me from it entirely. The rest of that dinner passed in a blur. I heard congratulations being offered to Nathan. I heard my mom asking about celebration plans. I heard my dad talking about brand vision and market positioning. But all I could focus on was the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. Nobody asked me what I thought. Nobody asked if I had questions or concerns. It was as if I wasn't even there, despite being the person who knew every client, every contract, every operational detail that kept the company running. I've never been the loud one in the family. Nathan inherited Dad's gift for commanding a room, for making people laugh, for selling ideas with passion and conviction. I inherited Mom's practical nature, her attention to detail, her ability to see problems before they became disaster. But that night, I realized that in my family's eyes, quiet competence meant nothing compared to charismatic presence. When Nathan started talking about his vision for expanding our social media presence and rebranding our client communications, I felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't just about hurt feelings. This was about watching someone with zero operational experience prepare to take over something I'd helped build from the ground up. I excused myself to the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror staring at my reflection. The same brown eyes as my father, the same stubborn jawline, but apparently none of the same presence that mattered. When I returned to the table, I did something that surprised even me. I smiled, shook Nathan's hand, and said, "Congratulations, brother. I'll be stepping down in 30 days. The room went quiet. Dad put down his fork. Mom stopped mid-sentence. Nathan's smile faltered. "Jordan," Dad said, "you don't need to." "Actually, I do," I interrupted. "Nathan's going to need space to implement his vision, and I have some ideas of my own I want to explore." The next morning, I walked into our office on Commerce Street with a different perspective. The building that had felt like home for 12 years suddenly felt like borrowed space. I looked around at the systems I'd built, the processes I'd streamlined, the relationships I'd cultivated, and I realized something they had all missed. My value wasn't just in the work I did, it was in the trust I'd earned. I spent the first week of my 30-day notice period doing something I'd never done before. I carefully reviewed every contract, every client agreement, every partnership deal I'd negotiated over the years. What I found was both illuminating and empowering. 3 of our biggest clients, representing nearly 40% of our annual revenue, were tied to me personally through performance-based agreements. These weren't just standard service contracts. They were relationships built on trust, reliability, and proven results. Martinez Industrial Supply had been with us for 8 years, but their contract specifically named me as their primary point of contact, with clauses that allowed them to renegotiate terms if I left the company. Thompson Manufacturing had a similar arrangement, and our biggest client, Riverside Distribution, had insisted on a personal guarantee clause that essentially made me their account manager for life. I had never thought of these details as leverage. I had negotiated these terms because I believed in taking personal responsibility for results. But now, looking at them with fresh eyes, I realized that my clients hadn't just been buying our company's services. They had been buying my commitment to their success. That afternoon, I called a meeting with our biggest client, Paul Rodriguez from Martinez Industrial Supply. We met at a small cafe downtown, away from the office. "Paul," I said, stirring my coffee, "I need to let you know that I'm leaving Hale Logistics at the end of the month." His face went pale. "Jordan, what the hell? You can't leave. We've got that expansion project starting in September." "I know, and I want to make sure you're taken care of. That's why I'm here." That conversation with Paul changed everything. As I explained my situation, carefully, professionally, without bad-mouthing my family, I watched his expression shift from concern to something that looked like opportunity. "So what are you planning to do?" he asked. "I'm starting my own consulting firm." The words came out before I had fully formed the thought, but as soon as I said them, I knew they were true. "I want to help companies like yours optimize their logistics operations without the overhead of a full-service provider." Paul leaned back in his chair. "That's exactly what we need. You know our business better than anyone. How do we make this work?" Over the next 2 weeks, I had similar conversations with Thompson Manufacturing and Riverside Distribution. Each meeting reinforced something I was beginning to understand. My value wasn't tied to the Hale Logistics brand. It was tied to my track record, my expertise, and the relationships I'd built through years of reliable service. But I wasn't just planning to compete with my family's business. I was planning to distance myself from it entirely. I had been researching international business opportunities for months, partly out of curiosity and partly because I'd always felt constrained by the Texas market. One of our smaller clients, Atlantic Imports, was based in Lisbon, Portugal, and their CEO, Maria Santos, had mentioned several times that American logistics expertise was in high demand in Europe. On a Thursday night, I called Maria. It was early morning in Lisbon, and I caught her just as she was getting to her office. "Jordan," she said, sounding genuinely pleased to hear from me. "How are things in Texas?" "Actually, Maria, I'm calling because things are about to change dramatically. I'm starting my own consulting firm, and I'm thinking about establishing a European base of operations. Would you have time to talk about what that might look like?" The conversation that followed was unlike any business discussion I'd ever had. Maria didn't just want to hire me as a consultant. She wanted to partner with me to bring American logistics efficiency to European markets. "Jordan, I have been waiting for this opportunity for 2 years," she said. "There are so many companies here that need exactly what you offer. When can you come to Lisbon?" 3 weeks into my notice period, I finally had the conversation I'd been dreading. Dad asked me to meet him at the office after hours. The building was quiet, and the late afternoon sun was streaming through the windows of the conference room, where we'd held so many strategy meetings. "Jordan," he said, settling into his chair, "I think we need to clear the air." I looked at him across the table, this man who had taught me everything I knew about business, about integrity, about working hard for what you want. The man who had apparently decided that none of that mattered as much as having the right presence. "Dad, I don't think there's anything to clear up. You made a decision that you felt was best for the company. I respect that. But I don't think you understand." "I understand perfectly," I interrupted. "Nathan has charisma. He can work a room, charm clients, represent the brand in ways that I can't. You've made that clear." Dad's face reddened. "That's not what this is about." "Then what is it about?" "It's about leadership, Jordan. It's about vision. It's about the fact that you think being quiet means being weak," I said. "It's about the fact that you value performance over substance. It's about the fact that you made a decision about the future of this company without consulting the person who's been running its operations for 12 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad stared at me, and I could see him struggling to find words. "I built this company," he finally said. "You built the foundation," I replied. "I built the systems that made it profitable. I built the relationships that made it sustainable. I built the processes that made it scalable. And you just gave it all to someone who doesn't even know how our inventory management system works. Nathan will learn. Nathan will learn by making mistakes that cost us clients, damage our reputation, and waste the trust that took us years to build. But that's not my problem anymore. The meetings with my 3 biggest clients were easier than I expected. Not because they were simple, but because they confirmed what I had suspected. These people had been working with me, not with Hale Logistics. Paul Rodriguez was the most direct. Jordan, I'll be honest with you, we've been happy with your company because we've been happy with you. If you're leaving, we need to seriously consider our options. I understand that, Paul, and I want to make sure you have the best possible service, whether that's with Hale Logistics under new management or with my new consulting firm. What would your consulting firm offer that Hale Logistics doesn't? Direct access to me, customized solutions designed specifically for your business, and flexibility that a larger company can't provide. The conversation lasted 2 hours. By the end, Paul had committed to transitioning his account to my new firm, contingent on my ability to provide the same level of service they'd come to expect. Thompson Manufacturing required more convincing, but the deciding factor was their upcoming expansion into the Southeast. They needed someone who understood their operations intimately and could manage the logistics of opening 3 new facilities. Nathan had never managed a project of that scope. Riverside Distribution was the biggest surprise. When I met with their CEO, Janet Crawford, I expected a difficult conversation about contract obligations and transition timelines. Instead, she opened with a question that caught me off guard. Jordan, why are you leaving? I gave her the diplomatic answer about pursuing new opportunities and exploring different markets. She listened politely, then leaned forward. Jordan, I've been in business for 25 years. I can tell the difference between someone who's leaving for opportunity and someone who's leaving because they've been screwed over. Which one are you? I looked at her across the table. This woman who had trusted me with her company's most critical logistics operations, who had insisted on working with me personally because she valued reliability over flash. The second one, I said. Then let's talk about how we can work together moving forward. While I was having these conversations in Texas, Maria Santos was laying the groundwork for something bigger than I had imagined. She had spent 2 weeks reaching out to her network in Portugal, Spain, and France, describing my background and expertise. When she called me with an update, her excitement was palpable. Jordan, you need to come to Lisbon as soon as possible. I have scheduled meetings with 4 companies that want to discuss consulting contracts, and I have found office space in the perfect location. Maria, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I'm not ready to. One of the companies is Iberian Logistics. They are the largest supply chain management firm in Portugal, and they want to discuss a partnership that could be worth €2 million in the first year alone. I sat in my apartment, looking out at the Fort Worth skyline, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years, genuine excitement about a business opportunity. Tell me more, I said. The opportunity Maria described was unlike anything I'd ever considered. Iberian Logistics was expanding into new markets, but lacked the American-style operational efficiency that had become their competitive disadvantage. They wanted to partner with someone who could help them restructure their processes and train their team. They are not looking for a consultant, Maria explained. They are looking for a partner, someone who can help them transform their entire approach to logistics management. And what's the timeline? They want to meet with you next month. But Jordan, I need to tell you something else. I have been talking to my contacts in Madrid and Barcelona. If this partnership works, we could expand into the entire Iberian Peninsula within 2 years. I hung up the phone and sat in my apartment, staring at the ceiling. 2 months ago, I had been the COO of a family business in Fort Worth, Texas. Now I was considering a partnership that could take me to Europe and potentially change my entire career trajectory. The irony wasn't lost on me. My family had valued presence and charisma over competence and result. But in Europe, Maria's contacts were excited about my track record, my expertise, and my ability to deliver measurable improvements. They didn't care if I was quiet in meetings. They cared if I could make their businesses more profitable. My last day at Hale Logistics was on a Friday in August. I had cleaned out my office, transferred my files, and prepared detailed handover documents for Nathan. I had also finalized agreements with my 3 biggest clients and confirmed my travel plans for Lisbon. Nathan had been avoiding me for 2 weeks, but on that Friday afternoon, he knocked on my office door. Jordan, do you have a minute? I looked up from packing my personal items. Sure. He came in and closed the door behind him. I want you to know that I didn't ask for. I know you didn't, and I want you to know that I have no idea how to do what you do. I stopped packing and looked at him. For the first time in weeks, Nathan looked vulnerable instead of confident. You'll figure it out, I said. Will I? Jordan, I've been looking at the client accounts you're handling. I don't even understand half of the contracts you've negotiated. And now I'm hearing rumors that some of our biggest clients are considering leaving. I sat down in my desk chair for what I knew would be the last time. Nathan, you have strengths that I don't have. You're great with people. You can sell ideas and inspire enthusiasm. But you're right that you don't understand operations. My advice, hire someone who does. We can't afford to hire someone with your level of experience. Then you need to learn fast. Nathan sat down across from me. Is there any chance you'd consider staying on as a consultant? Part-time maybe? Just until I get up to speed? I had been expecting this conversation. I don't think that would work. Why not? Because Dad made it clear that he doesn't value my contributions to this company. Because you can't learn to run operations with me looking over your shoulder. And because I have other opportunities that I'm excited about. What kind of opportunity? I looked at my brother, this person I'd grown up with, competed with, and ultimately been passed over for. I'm starting a consulting firm. I'm moving to Europe, and I'm taking some of our clients with me. The color drained from Nathan's face. What do you mean taking clients? I mean that Martinez Industrial, Thompson Manufacturing, and Riverside Distribution have all signed contracts with my new firm. It's all legal, Nathan. I checked with our attorney. Jordan, you can't do this. This will destroy the company. No, I said, standing up and extending my hand. This will teach the company that competence matters more than presence, that relationships matter more than charisma, and that decisions have consequences. Nathan stared at my outstretched hand for a long moment before shaking it. I hope you know what you're doing, he said. For the first time in years, I replied. I absolutely do. Lisbon in September is magical. The light is golden, the air is crisp, and the city has an energy that feels both historic and forward-looking. I arrived on a Tuesday morning, exhausted from the flight but exhilarated by the possibilities ahead. Maria met me at the airport, and within an hour we were sitting in a cafe in the Chiado district, reviewing my schedule for the week. 4 client meetings, a tour of potential office spaces, and a dinner with her business partners. Jordan, she said, sipping her coffee, I have been thinking about what you said regarding your family situation. I want you to know that here, we value different things. What do you mean? In Portugal, we have a saying, quem não tem cão, caça com gato. It means whoever doesn't have a dog hunts with a cat. But I think the American version is better. Actions speak louder than words. The meetings that week exceeded every expectation I had. Iberian Logistics not only wanted to partner with me, they wanted to offer me a permanent position as their Director of Operations Development. The role would involve traveling throughout Europe, helping their clients optimize their logistics operations, and building the kind of consulting practice I had always dreamed of. We have been looking for someone with your background for 2 years, their CEO, Carlos Mendoza, explained over lunch. Someone who understands both the technical and strategic aspects of logistics management. Someone who can work with our clients to deliver real results. And you're not concerned that I'm not, as they say, a people person. Carlos laughed. Jordan, our clients don't want someone who can charm them at cocktail parties. They want someone who can save them money and improve their efficiency. That's exactly what you do. The office space Maria had found was in a converted warehouse in the Alcantara district, with exposed brick walls, large windows, and a view of the Tagus River. It was the kind of space where I could imagine building something meaningful. But the real validation came when I called Paul Rodriguez to give him an update on my transition. Jordan, I have to tell you something, he said. Since you left, we've had 3 meetings with Nathan. He's a nice guy, but he doesn't understand our business. He's been trying to sell us services we don't need and raising prices on services we do need. I'm sorry to hear that, Paul. Don't be sorry. Be ready to take on more work, because we're going to need you to handle our European expansion too. 6 months later, I was sitting in my office in Lisbon, reviewing contracts for my 4th European client, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed my father's number. I hadn't spoken to him since I left Texas. I knew through mutual friends that Nathan was struggling, that the company had lost 2 more clients, and that they were considering selling the business. I stared at the phone for 3 rings before answering. "Hello, Dad." Jordan. His voice sounded tired, older than I remember. "How are you?" "I'm well. Very well, actually." "Good. That's good. I'm calling because I think we need to talk." I looked out my window at the river, at the boats moving slowly through the water, at the life I had built 3,000 miles away from the family that had undervalued me. "What do you want to talk about, Dad?" "About coming home, about the company, about fixing what's broke." There was a time when that call would have filled me with hope, a time when I would have jumped at the chance to return to Texas and prove my worth to my family. But sitting in my office in Lisbon, with 3 signed contracts on my desk and a 4th client meeting scheduled for the next morning, I felt nothing but calm certainty. "Dad, I am home, and nothing's broken here." "Jordan, please." Nathan is in over his head. "The company is struggling. We need you. You needed me 6 months ago. You chose not to recognize that. I made a mistake. I can admit that now. I appreciate that, Dad. But admitting mistakes doesn't change the consequences." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, "So that's it. You're never coming back." I thought about my answer carefully. I'm not coming back to fix problems that were created by valuing the wrong things. I'm not coming back to save a company that chose charisma over competence. And I'm not coming back to work for people who made it clear that they don't understand my value. "Jordan, you're my son." "I know, Dad, and I'll always be your son. But I'm not your employee anymore. I'm not your backup plan. And I'm not your solution to problems that you created." After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, watching the sun set over the Tagus River. I thought about the boy who had grown up in Fort Worth, who had worked so hard to prove himself worthy of his family's respect. I thought about the man who had been passed over for promotion in favor of someone with more presence. And I thought about the person I had become, someone who had learned that his worth wasn't determined by other people's recognition, but by his own actions and their results. My phone buzzed with a text from Maria. "Dinner at 8. Carlos wants to discuss the Barcelona expansion." I smiled, picked up my jacket, and headed for the door. I had work to do.